So, the graduate school today is offering professional headshots, so I thought I'd have you guys come along with me while I get ready for that. I forgot to add the clip of me adding the milk. And also, don't worry, this is decaf because it's like almost 2:15 in the afternoon, which is a little bit late for when I like to be drinking my coffee. Sorry about the mess back there. That's going to be a different video. That the mess is just due to everything. So in this case, I'm looking at just doing a pretty neutral look. I've yet to decide what kind of lip I think, but we'll figure it out as the makeup goes on. Gotta move the bangs out of the face. With getting ready, I was thinking about talking about conferences because if we're looking professional, might as well talk about professional stuff. I have gone to a total of 4 conferences now. Yeah, because I've done one this calendar year so far. I did 3 back in 2022. Actually, I guess you could almost say I've done 5 because we also had an in-club meeting, like symposium thing. So that was also like a conference. I dressed professionally at least. Oh shoot, did I not grab? 1 second. Okay, I was missing my under eye liner. I've gone to a couple of them, so I thought I'd give some pointers as a graduate student. And also I do have notes for talking about them. So if you see me looking down specifically in this area, it's because I'm trying to grab my notes. With conferences, you always have to write an abstract beforehand. And so I honestly, what I do is I end up having a couple of ideas in my back pocket at any given point. So I can just kind of pull it out and do that. Like that's been a problem I've been going through right now. I'm trying to think of what new things I can possibly study and write about so I can have those abstracts. And in my case, since computational usually has a little bit of a faster turnaround, we're writing these abstracts out before we've really completed these studies. So that causes a, not a problem, but makes it a little bit more interesting in trying to write it out. Some people also may not even write abstracts until they've got a paper under review for conferences, because this has happened to one of my professors. She was presenting at a conference and somebody took her research and published it before she had time to. So after that, she just only will do conferences and talks at conferences if she's already published on that work, or at least it's in review. In my case, I've talked about how I haven't published it, but I have papers ready to go and I have research and I have like bullet points of ideas that I want to do for research so I can use them for conferences. And with those kind of writing the abstracts, you want to make sure that it's pretty broad, like broad but not too broad, because you may not know your outcomes yet, but you don't want it to be effectively what your like thesis or dissertation's on. And this does take practice. At this point, I've written a lot of abstracts, so I'm familiar with what to do. But like the first 2 abstracts I wrote, oh my gosh. One of them pretty much was almost entirely written by my advisor, who was like my co-author on it. And then the other one I wrote myself, but I look back and I'm like, that was a bad abstract. And I was happy I got demoted to a poster, because also this is a problem when you're looking at the symposium and where to actually send like your talks to. Go for the smaller ones usually, because the smaller ones, you'll hear sooner about it, but then also usually you're not competing with professors for talks, so you don't get demoted as quickly. And it took me like a year to really learn it, because the first time I had done a conference talk, it worked out fine for me, but second and third time, both I ended up having like stuff demoted. So that was fun. But also I look back and I'm like, there were very few graduate students talking, and if they were talking, it was the last day for like half a day. So just like keep that in mind. Besides that, now you haven't done one of these in a while. Once you've also done the like the abstract and you've heard back, which usually they will say yes for, get your plan stuff done early. I'm usually really bad about that, but yeah, you want to try to get all your plans figured out pretty quickly. See who else from your university is going, so you guys can either fly together, room together. I usually like to fly by myself if I have to fly out to a conference, because I have the worst luck while flying. Like, whew, this last conference, that was rough because I ended up having the jet bridge break on me for both flights. It's a lot of fun. I got in like 3 hours later than I was supposed to, which is not the most delayed I've been, but like after a conference, I was just so tired. Because I'll get more into that later, but conferences are absolutely exhausting. So with conferences, before you get to them, that like couple of weeks beforehand. So you're always going to be working on your research, so you have some idea of what's going on, but make sure about 2-3 weeks beforehand you start planning out what you're going to talk about. And at 2 weeks, really, especially if you're doing a talk, you have your slides at least somewhat ready to go, at least a rough draft, so you can start practicing, because you're going to go through a lot of iterations. That is something I've realized in graduate school, is in certain cases I do a one and done kind of presentation, but things like conference talks and like the bigger presentations, you iterate through so many PowerPoints and you try to figure out how exactly you want to format them. And that just takes a long time. And because you're still wanting to get other work done, it's only like an hour or two here, an hour or two there. Once you get to the 1 week mark, that is when you really have to start focusing on the conference. Especially in my case, if I have posters or something, that's usually kind of when I start to really start doing the final touches on them, because I've done a lot of posters now, and as a heads up, whenever you make a poster for a conference, there's at least going to be one mistake. It's okay, but just as a heads up, that's going to be a thing. Don't be surprised, I guess is a better comment. I'm trying to decide if I want to use my highlighter from the Natasha Denona or the Fozzie Bear. I'm thinking, actually, that may be a fun color combo. I'll do the highlighter from Beauty Bakery and the Fozzie Bear. Kind of add a little bit more depth. But back onto topic. Big thing when you're doing these conferences and is the last week. And if you're doing a poster specifically, try to get the poster printed out like a couple of days before. The couple of times I've had to do posters, the first one I didn't do it until like the last minute really. It was rough. Second time, I actually started working on my poster earlier because I also knew I was flying out right after spring break. So I didn't know if the people that ran the poster stuff at the university were going to be there. They were, it was fine. But that second time, I at least tried to get it a little bit earlier. I actually sent it a couple of days before I was traveling, which was good because I'd made mistakes on how the sizing was, because I had accidentally, in trying to print it, like get it into a PDF, I accidentally did print to PDF, so it'd be on a single page versus save as PDF, so I could still keep the same size. I outsmarted myself, really. That was my problem. So because of that, it took a couple of days, and the guy had initially at some point like overlooked the email where I was like, hey, here's the fix. So giving myself a couple extra days made it a lot less stressful, so I could get the poster still and be in a good spot. That's some of the big stuff with like getting your talks ready, and make sure you also practice your talks a lot. I have a lot of friends who will do it like kind of the day before or maybe 2 days, but it's best to give as many days as possible to practice and practice in front of as many people so you get an idea of what you're doing and like where you get tripped up. Also with the talks and everything, because by the time you're like 2 weeks out, you're typically gonna know who is also presenting in your same symposium and like your same session. So for example, the time I have talked at TMS for a talk, I was last session, last day, third person. So I kind of was already like, I don't need to go into depth on what a high entropy alloy is. We have been listening to that for 4 days straight. I could like reduce those number of slides. So that was good. And also remember to give yourself with these talks time for questioning. So usually the rule of thumb in conferences is you get 20 minutes, 15-minute talk, 5 minutes for questions. And with that, remember to you don't want to overload your slides and you want to make it succinct. That is the thing in all academic stuff, is flowery language is lovely and we're always taught that in school, but like honestly, it's not very helpful at conferences. But the other thing is give yourself 1.5 minutes per slide. So don't overload the slides, but also dedicate about 1.5 minutes. So at TMS this year, I saw my academic uncle. So he is the current student of my advisor's advisor. That's the family tree stuff, because of course all of academia is just one big family tree. But in this whole case, he had a talk, and it was a 15-minute talk, and he finished at like 15 minutes, but he only had 8 slides. Like he put the number was right there. I keep on looking in the screen to see how it looks. I think it's pretty good. I keep on going back and forth to make sure everything is like blended enough, and using my fingers a lot because it works better for this kind of stuff. A little bit more natural. So times I've done presentations for like my qualifying exam, I was like, okay, I've got 45 minutes. that means I should give about 30 slides, do this, this, and that. So kind of talked more about the slides and presenting. Also, when you actually get to the conference, now that I think about it, and you're practicing your presentation, try to like practice in one of the rooms so you get a feeling of the setup, and if you can, also practice presenting in the room you are going to be presenting in. So I've done that. And lastly, don't forget your USB, because usually you're switching laptops and things for the conferences, so just bring a USB with your presentation in there so you can put it onto the laptop in the actual room. Makes life a lot easier than having to have people wait around and just be like, what's going on? Let me get my eyeliner on. Okay, eyeliner is on. Other stuff with these conferences are things like, I honestly, for myself, prefer to bring enough clothes for that I can wear something different every day. Though I will say usually just bring one blazer, coat, or whatever. You don't need a lot of that. But I usually bring enough clothes for every single day because I just really don't know. The other thing is I do also try to make sure it's all things that I can mix and match. So sometimes you may rewear something, but you have the option not to. Maybe it's me just being an overpacker, which I know I am. I've seen how I pack things. Like, I can fit a lot of things in there, but then I have a lot of stuff. That is something I prefer to do. I also usually only bring max 2 pairs of shoes, 1 comfortable pair of shoes and 1 more professional pair of shoes, because at these conferences, you're walking a lot. Like, you walk a lot for these things. It's actually exhausting. I usually get, for conferences, on the low end, I end up getting about 7,000 steps. Both TMS this year and MS&T last year, I got usually on average like 1,000 steps, because at least in my case, I've usually ended up staying at places a little bit further away from the convention center or hotel or wherever we're hosting the stuff. So that requires some walking, and yeah. So you want to have hopefully like a comfortable pair of shoes, which if you bring your backpack, you can just sneak it in there. Also with clothes, for anybody who wears skirts or dresses, either wear tights or again have like another set of clothes in your bag in case, because oh man, the chafing is horrible. I have worn dresses to conferences, or as like skirts, yeah, because I remember specifically at MS&T I did not wear a skirt, or I wore a skirt with no tights. I'm going to use my viewfinder effectively. I'm filming this on my camera to get this because I have to hold back my bangs. Yeah, you want to wear the tights because that kind of helps with chafing, or stockings or whatever. It's bad. And like the fall conferences, most of the time with those, it's like earlier fall, so everything is just like could be a little bit on the hotter side, or like still like teensy bit humid kind of thing. Forget that this like stuff is like full coverage, because I usually wear my tinted moisturizer, but I wanted a more full coverage look. And I'm gonna need to bronze up myself somehow. Still not super bad, but yeah, so for those kind of clothing options, I joke because at these conferences, sometimes you get the like guys who will wear, like, I saw some guys wearing t-shirts, which is like, really? This is an international conference. Bring multiple options, but I like to have multiple options for any of these talks that I do. In terms of traveling there, like I mentioned, it's kind of fun to have a buddy, but I usually don't. I like to get there usually a day before, at least the main stuff is occurring, because I want to give myself a little bit of time to adjust, since the first day is usually really crazy, because that's when you'll have poster sessions, at least the first round of poster sessions, if not just the only poster sessions. You'll also have things like, that's when registration is. The example I use is TMS. I usually get there on the Saturday before. I prefer to get there on the Saturday. Next year I may go in on the Sunday. It also helps that the last 2 TMSs have been at home, so I know how to recover from flying from Kentucky to the West Coast. TMS in 2024 will be actually in Florida, so yeah, it's bad because the flying is not as intense. But with these conferences, I like to get there a day before just to kind of adjust, because especially like if they sometimes have the Sunday like check-in kind of thing, which will just be usually just getting your registration. You don't need to do that. You can get it the next day, which is what I've done with like MS&T because of just timing for things. But also the thing is though, that Sunday night especially will be the socialization for graduate students, or which is just always good to do because we've become so isolated in our field that like you get so used to just the people in your department that you don't branch out as much. So being able to socialize with others is always a good thing to do. Also, you do want to at least check the program beforehand, not just for like the social events, which I always recommend doing the social events, because you get to meet people. Usually you get free drinks also, which is kind of fun. But the other thing is, in checking the program, especially you check the full technical program, you can see what other symposias and talks are going on, so you can get an idea of where you want to be. These conferences also usually have an app associated with them, which is very, very helpful because then you can get an idea of what talks are going on, and you can, the big thing is save way more talks than you'll ever go to if it's anything interesting or stuff related to your field, because you can look up that person that is talking later and look through their group's paper, so it may still be something useful for you. I still actually have the TMS app on my phone because I have yet to go through all of the different talks and write down and save the ones that I need to read the papers from. But that's a big thing, is saving all the papers that you'll see, because also conferences are a lot. It's a lot of socialization and a lot of learning. Your brain becomes mush. So don't try to like fill every single second with learning, because by day 3 you're just gonna be dead. Heck, usually day 2 you're like dead if you go hard the first day. So pace yourself. Like Monday, like I said, Monday is usually the crazy day for these conferences, but you don't need to be like, oh, boom, 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 boom. Like, just keep it chill. Maybe go to a few more symposium, because again, that's when you'll get a lot of those invited talks, which are the professors that are like, you're like, oh my gosh, it's that professor. I've been reading their stuff for a long time and you want to get to know. Yeah, so like go to those, but just be prepared and pace yourself. Other stuff with these talks, don't take photos. You know how I mentioned earlier that I had a professor who got her work stolen? People will like take photos, especially if taking photos, they'll like think you're trying to steal their work. If you take notes, usually that's not as crazy of a thing. Sometimes you still get weird looks, but it's not as pronounced. I usually take notes, like actually this notebook that I have the notes for this is the notebook I use for TMS that I need to go through. But yeah, you have to be very careful on that because people are very concerned, because some people are cutthroat. I've heard of the years before. It's gotten a little bit better now, but like back in the day, people used to be really cutthroat. And I've occasionally seen it once in a while at these conferences, but they're not. It's usually between professors, or can be a little bit harsher on each other, but nothing like absolutely mean about it. That's just like, do not take photos at conferences because they're gonna think you're stealing it. Honestly, that's about all I have for conference work. I will say, have fun. If you have time, enjoy the restaurants in the area that you're going to. Like, and make friends with other universities, because these are the people that you will be working with for like decades probably. We're all in the same field. We're all in it together. So enjoy that time. Forgot that this has a lot of fallout. But yeah, like I at conferences have started to make friends for things to the point where I see them at other conferences. I'm like, hey, we know each other. We chat, we're friends, we talk about research, but we also like can just have fun. And yeah, also do not be afraid to talk to the professors. That has helped me with research and kind of getting an idea of things. So I highly recommend. Also, I think I got mascara on my bangs a bit. Whoops. Let's move it out of the eye for this one, just to be on the safe side, because the bangs are blonde-ish. Yeah, so let's get a lip on, and then I think I'm good to go for this. Hopefully this is a good dark enough lip color. Okay, I feel like it makes my lips stand out enough and looks good. Okay, so let's get the rest of like the coat and shoes on, and I'll see you guys in a sec. So I've got my coat on. I finished drinking my decaf coffee and let's get ready to go. Or really, I'm gonna head out and I shall see you guys next time. Please remember to like, comment, share, and subscribe. And bye!